Happy Wednesday, everybody, and thanks for checking into our latest TDR, Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, going one-on-one today, and we have got a really good interview here today. Cresco Labs, they're considered probably the most connected company in Washington regarding all kinds of legislation news. How do they hear about this? What are some of the informations that they heard? Most importantly, we want to tackle this story from yesterday, rescheduling updates, and as well safe banking, how that's going to progress. I like to call this Washington Wednesdays. So with that, we're going to welcome in our featured guest here today. He's the Executive Vice President of Government Relations from Cresco Labs, John Sullivan. First time to the podcast. Good day. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Chad. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm happy to be taking a couple days off back in Chicago from my usual time in Washington, D.C. So
nice.
Nice to talk to you.
So based off of that, I want to get people kind of paint the picture a little bit more as to who you are and what you do. But how often are you in Washington? Because as I said off the top, you guys spend more lobbying money, I think twice as much as the second biggest company in the cannabis industry when it comes to lobbying in Washington. And I know a lot of executives will talk about, yeah, we need change. We have to be there. You guys are talking the talk, walking the walk. You're there a lot. But how often are you in Washington and having conversations?
Yeah, I'm in Washington pretty much whenever Congress is in session and sometimes when they're not, talking to staff, et cetera. So, at Cresco Labs, we've always, one of our commitments has been to be one of the most important companies in cannabis, if not the most important company in cannabis. And with that, you can't be that without being in Washington, D.C. and being on the Hill pretty much daily, which we are.
Well, what I like about what you guys do a lot, led by your CEO, Charlie Backdill, you just go about your way and it's not like over promoting it. It's just like when there's something to be said, that's when you guys will speak. But in the meantime, it's just like the actual work is being done. But, let's face it, we're in the summer doldrums right now. I looked at the trading volume amongst the top MSOs today, and it was less than 2 million. So it's pretty quiet right now. Markets have been dead. And you can imagine these anti-legalization groups have their pitchforks out right now. But outside of all this, we've had some good conversations over the last week with some reputable people, including Eric Berlin, who's from Denton's, as well as Darren Weiss from Verano Holdings. He's actually an attorney as well. But we talked about rescheduling and the whole Chevron deference last week. But, in your own view, how would you say that we're progressing as an industry as a whole? Like, are we in the right direction? Is this just a lot of noise pertaining to rescheduling right now? And I see a smirk on your face, so I pretty much know the answer to this one, but go ahead.
Listen, election times, there's always a ton of political noise.
Of course.
We've seen a lot through the Appropriations Committee, et cetera. But, I think the most important thing that's going on right now and continues to go on is the rescheduling process. We have to remember, people talk about this in terms of, Biden's doing this now for, some political reason. I mean, the reality of this is, and we've been working on this since September of 2021 with the Biden administration. He announced this back in October of 2022. Like, this isn't new. This is something they've been working on. They've been working hard on. They understand the numbers. They understand the numbers in all polling nationwide. But more importantly, we're talking about recognizing cannabis as having a medical benefit. What is obvious to the entire country is finally becoming obvious to the federal government. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. That's really what rescheduling is.
Yep.
And we are so far down that road. Some fringe members of Congress that are still against cannabis are trying to do, et cetera, will not stand in the way of rescheduling getting done.
So when we look at the HHS recommendation last September, these conversations about rescheduling happened a year and a half, even prior to that. So this has been ongoing conversations. Like, how do they view this? Like, you're inside some of these rooms talking to some pretty connected people, and we can speculate all we want as far as like reaching out to different media companies outside of us. And here's some of the conversations that take place and how we think people view it. But what do you learn about, a lot of the views on rescheduling? Does the DEA want this to happen? There's all these things that circulate around right now. We don't know what to believe and what not to believe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, I'm a former prosecutor, actually, in the city of Chicago before I got into my government career. So I know a lot of folks in law enforcement. And, there are DEA career insiders that have spent their entire lives prosecuting cannabis cases, and trafficking cases. And are some of them still opposed to rescheduling cannabis to Schedule 3? Of course. But we have to keep in mind the person that signed the recommendation from DOJ for Schedule 3 was the Attorney General of the United States. There's no more powerful law enforcement figure. He has put his name on it already.
Bingo.
DEA continues to go through the required process as required by legislation. They're having the public comment period that's rapidly coming to a close. There's no signs from the administration in slowing this down. I mean, you've got a president of the United States who talked about it in the State of the Union. You have a vice president who's been repeatedly out there talking about how this is going to happen. The odds, listen, nothing in government is ever 100%, but this train is way down the tracks. Confidence is still high for sure.
Well, a lot of conversations we've had over the last couple of weeks is about how this is becoming very political. And as I said, the anti-legalization groups, as we reach this comment deadline, it's like a new story is almost posted every single day and creating uncertainty. And I think a lot of fear mongering, including the latest yesterday, where the story that was reported by Marijuana Moment outlined that a GOP congressional committee who had a bill approved aims to block marijuana rescheduling while rejecting state cannabis protections amendment. There was a hearing on Tuesday where a panel passed the legislation covering commerce, justice, science, and related agencies. So full stop. Let's set this record straight. I did go onto Twitter. There are some people that were afraid. There's other people said, don't lose an ounce of sleep off of that. Do you believe that? If so, why?
Yeah, do not lose an ounce of sleep over that. I mean, there is no appetite to have anything like that happen in the United States Senate. There's no appetite, I don't believe, for it to get through the full House of Representatives, and certainly not through any conference committee. I mean, that is a long road to passage still, like anything else. I mean, it's likely that we don't even get appropriations done until the lame duck session of Congress, and we fully anticipate that rescheduling will be done before then. So if they took the money away from a process that is already completed, what difference does that make, right? So at the end of the day, the ship has sailed. Again, they're spending the money on it now to review the comments. That process is going to be over before any votes. And again, I don't even want to suggest that there's a realistic possibility of that happening because, Chuck Schumer, et cetera, are committed to making sure this process moves forward. He's not going to let that go through in any type of final bill.
Yeah, we got T-minus 12 days, just a little over 26,000 now public comments related to this deadline. Impressive as far as the turnout, I would say. And again, the bulk of them are very positive, over 90%, which is pretty telling to say the least. But Charlie Bachtell, your CEO, was on a couple weeks ago with us, and I flat out asked him the question, do you believe rescheduling takes place prior to the election? And he said yes. Do you agree with that?
I do. And listen, I mean, this is not unprecedented that, I think, I haven't looked today, but you're right. The commentary was around 26,000 comments. Most of them are, I love cannabis, or I don't love or I hate cannabis. They're pretty simple and easy to get through. There are some that have some weight that DEA will look through, I'm sure. But, this isn't unprecedented for menthol cigarettes. FDA got over, I think, 150,000 comments and still got that, they're the final part of that done within a year. So we're, a couple months to do 30,000. They certainly have the technology and the ability to get it done.
So what does your day look like when you're going to Washington as much as you say that you are? When you touch ground on the nation's capital, what goes on throughout the day that you're speaking with? And without naming names, you obviously have to have a great network of people. You guys spend more money, as I said, twice as much versus any other company in the space right now, which is why, and that's full, transparent, public documents that you say when it comes to lobbying. So with that, what does your day entail when you're in Washington, and who are you speaking with?
Sure, it varies. I mean, full credit to Charlie and our board for making this investment. But we have to continue to move cannabis policy forward. I mean, we do everything. I'll meet with senators, meet with representatives, mostly meet with their staffs, but also advocates. I mean, we have to keep in mind that there are people that are still going to jail for cannabis offenses in this country, which is absurd. So we continue to push for Congress to change that, and we'll take an act of Congress really to change cannabis policy long term, right? Or on broad spectrum for releasing people from jail. So we talk to advocates, we talk to community members, talk to other operators, participate in a few different associations that regularly brings other operators out there with us. Charlie is both the head of the United States Cannabis Council and the National Cannabis Roundtable. So we do a lot of the coordinating of other industry members, making sure their voices are heard on the Hill, small operators, bringing them out to the Hill so that our members of Congress, there's a constant drumbeat, because really the hardest thing to do is keep cannabis as a high priority amongst members of Congress. There's so much going on in the world. We could get into all that, but unless there's a steady drumbeat, unless you're there every day when they're in session and talking to their staff and reminding them how important these issues are, they just naturally fall down the ladder of importance. So we are just there constantly doing the drumbeat. We're also in the White House talking to the administration, working with members of the cabinet. Certainly Secretary Becerra has been great. Like there's just coordinating all of that to keep this moving forward is the key.
Yeah. Don Murphy's told us you guys need to rent an Airbnb for about 2 months right after. And I'm like, yeah, that would be nice. But, the biggest, yeah, I know, right. I guess the biggest experience or takeaway that I got when I was back there in April, and we got some great video content. And I was actually interviewing Senator JD Vance, just asking him, and he didn't know the difference between safe banking and rescheduling. And I'm not expecting him to understand what rescheduling is, but the biggest eye opener is just like, look, like this industry, and I think a lot of people know this because we've said this a number of times, there's just not enough awareness. So do you feel like where we are today and pushing the narrative forward, we're in a lot, like, look, when we look at the midterm elections of 2022 versus where we are today, we're in a lot better situation, are we not?
Oh, there is no doubt. I mean, you look at, JD Vance is interesting. I mean, his staff is great. I've had several meetings with them. They understand the issues very well. Ohio's in an interesting situation. It's about to have an adult use launch. I mean, as these senators and congressmen who may have been opposed to cannabis or unsure, et cetera, in the past, as they see it up and operating in their states, especially in highly regulated environments, we find that most of them start to come around to the side of safe banking or helping small businesses, et cetera. The normal kind of Republican flavor of wanting to create jobs and economic opportunity, and nobody does that better right now in this country than the cannabis industry. I mean, we've had some tough times the last 18 months or so, but we are still out there. We're still growing revenue. We're still opening new stores. We're still, boosting the economy in the United States. And certainly JD Vance and others understand that, as well as, former President Trump, as well as the Biden administration, for sure.
That's interesting because I put out a tweet yesterday, and it was basically a clip that I had with Senator Vance. And this is going back, 3 months ago. But in this clip, it basically said, he quoted saying, "If the legislation is better, I'd be more likely to support it pertaining to safe banking." That he thought a lot of the reasons that it drove, I guess, maybe towards the fentanyl trafficking scene. I think a lot of people's first perceptions was just like, does he really understand as to like what the current landscape is in this space right now? And I actually asked him, if it was restructured, is it something you would reconsider? So based on a lot of your conversations, what's your big takeaway with how he views cannabis right now? Is like he being educated, he's open-minded to like re-looking at this?
Yeah, no, I think he has been very thoughtful about cannabis issues. I think, there's a personal history there, an emotional history with his mother, if you've read his book, et cetera, like the things he's gone through in his life, which happens a lot. So there's a lot longer educational process. It can be a tougher decision. But I will say, I mean, he definitely gets the issue generally. As far as the money laundering and kind of those complaints about safe banking, we heard those from Senator Grassley at the end of last year. Some of those issues raised. We've worked with his office. We've worked with several other offices on those issues. We believe that safer banking addressed a lot of those. And, hopefully, as Ohio moves into adult use, and Senator Vance, who may or may not be a likely vice presidential contender here, we'll know in the next week or so. We'll see that, the sky doesn't fall when cannabis is legalized. In fact, it creates a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities, and ends up helping a lot of people. And I think the more that happens, the more we'll see Senator Vance and others come around.
Yeah, which brings me out to my next topic, which is this U.S. election. Look, we had Eric Berlin from Denton's on a week ago, and he outlined that, a lot of these anti-legalizations group led by Sam and Kevin Sabet are all looking to delay the process in this whole rescheduling. And the reasons why is to have a better chance of having rescheduling turned down in the event that Donald Trump were reelected and his administration took office. Is there anything that we're not understanding, or maybe looking at this from the wrong angle? Like, is the Trump administration, you think, for or against something like rescheduling?
Listen, I think it depends on who you talk to in the Trump administration. And it's kind of a middle of the road answer. I mean, listen, I think that The former president has never been outright opposed to this. I mean, again, he's got members of his family who had some addiction issues as well, right? So it can be a tougher decision. But I think the biggest fear is we get into a world of, you get a Jeff Sessions appointed, right? You get somebody who's kind of on the fringe who gets one of these appointments now, and Jeff Sessions, who withdrew the Cole memo. But what did you see ultimately from the administration? Nothing changed, right? They didn't come after any of the, even though they withdrew the memo, it's not like they started prosecuting medical cannabis companies. Every indication I have from the Trump world is that not a whole lot would change from cannabis, which is, why, if we want, does it mean great progress? I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. But I will say this, what we've heard from former President Trump time and again is states' rights. He's a very big proponent now of what states are doing when you look at abortion and other issues. And I think you see a lot of momentum. If you look at what former Senator Cory Gardner has done with states, the States Act, there's been other players who are really interested in just letting the states make this decision. I think under a Trump administration or a continued Biden administration or a Harris administration or whatever, you see a lot more momentum coming forward to finally solve this by letting each state decide its future in cannabis, a federal States Act.
Interesting to see. I did learn, though, that Eric Berlin, again, was saying that as far as the delaying process, it doesn't really have a leg to stand on right now because, as far as the delaying process, this has been something that's been put in play for over a year now. So I think that would be thrown out of court is basically what he would say. So a lot of this fear-mongering stuff, I think, is all in an effort to just basically to delay things. And, that's great to know from one of the most probably respected attorneys in the entire industry across the country to say this would not have a leg to stand on because you've had plenty of time to review this. So that was encouraging.
And listen, I mean, I know Sam asked for an additional 30 days of comment period. I think that likely gets denied or not even responded to. I don't see any additional comment period. Whether or not there's an ALJ hearing remains to be seen. Listen, but, for Sam and everybody else, the key to this is showing that they're somehow adversely affected. And simply by the federal government saying there's a medical benefit to cannabis and it's not as the abuse potential isn't as high as cocaine or fentanyl. These are obvious things. Who really has a complaint? How does anybody have are they personally affected by that where they could sue the government or say that they've done something wrong? There's no there. So I totally agree with Eric. Eric and I are close.
Chicago guys.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the odds. I mean, listen, there's anything can happen in government. I like to say that, but the odds of some delay of this are so remote, especially when it comes to the Biden administration listening to smart approaches to marijuana. It's
yeah, I know.
Not going to happen.
Well, look, everyone's favorite topic, and I know they kind of groan when I say this, but it's about safe banking, and it brings on to our next topic. Look, we've had, a lot of conversation pertaining to this, and we've had lobbyists like Don Murphy on recently. He came out with a pretty bold tweet today that basically says he believes both rescheduling and safe banking will pass prior to Inauguration Day, which is January 20th, 2025. Now, I know that there's a catch-22 with that. How much momentum will this create in the event rescheduling were to happen at some point in the fall? I gotta believe that a domino effects will, start happening or start occurring, would they not?
Yeah, it does. Listen, I've talked to a lot of Republican members of Congress that have said, come back to me when cannabis is in Schedule 1, right? I mean, Schedule 1 suggests, from a law enforcement perspective that it's the worst of the worst. You can't do any worse than Schedule 1, right? It's heroin. It's worse than fentanyl, right? And so what they said to me is they would have a much easier time to go back to their constituency as Schedule 3 when there's a federally recognized medical benefit to cannabis, when they say it's not as dangerous as fentanyl, to have a more enlightened conversation about where cannabis should be as part of the federal narrative. But so I see a lot easier conversations. I see a lot better chances of attaching SAFE to other bills, people letting it go when that happens, or Republicans letting it go when that happens, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I won't be as bold as Don. I love Don. He's a friend. He certainly... I value his opinion a lot. Listen, lame ducks are tough, depending on how the House is switched. But here's what I know. We have very vocal advocates on both sides. Senator Daines Certainly on the Republican side, Chuck Schumer on the Democrat side, I know for a fact, I've heard from both of them how much they want to get this done. If there's any opportunity for this to happen in lame duck, those guys are gonna get this done. We'll get safe banking. It is certainly much more likely than not at this point.
Okay, I gotta ask this question then, because there's so many people like that's truthful. Like Chuck Schumer, because actions speak louder than words. You can imagine the investor base. It's like I've heard this message before time and time again, and it's never really gone anywhere. But what makes you believe, based on your conversations, that Chuck Schumer wants to get this done?
Listen, I think it's because I've seen the work more this year from his office, from his staff, who were great on this issue, more negotiation, more talking to Senator Daines' office, more working with Republicans to make this happen than has happened previously.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they and you've seen Senator Schumer, most of his comments, positive comments, have been about this year. Like, we're going to get this done. We're going to put it on the floor, those kinds of things. And again, when you have Senator Daines on the Republican side and Senator Schumer on the Democrat side saying the same thing at the same time, if they start saying different things, I'll be much more concerned. But right now, their staffs are working well together. They're moving this forward.
John, what do you think's delayed? Why do you think it's been delayed then? Like what is it? If you had to, I know it's a tough question to answer, but we got some viewers on here and they're giving feedback right now, and they're saying both Cory Booker and Chuck Schumer. In fairness, Schumer doesn't want safer, neither does Booker. I will say I was in the hallways in Washington back in April, and I never seen Cory Booker ran a 40-yard dash faster than I could keep up with him. Like, he was gone. So that made me believe that he does not want to talk about anybody related to cannabis. But what is it? Like, what is the common question that people want to know? Why is it taking so long? And the views of Chuck Schumer?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's I think now it's vehicle. It comes down to vehicle, and it comes down to what all can you get, right? It's this negotiating process. It's, can you get, does Graham need to be in there, which would allow, people to have guns with cannabis? Does Hope get in there? The expungement piece,
Yep.
Like, what exactly are the details that it looks like? And, frankly, we've had a lot of objections from, Mitch McConnell as far as attaching it to other pieces of legislation. I know last year, Senator Toomey, Senator Grassley objected with some concerns about putting into the legislation at the end of the year. The one benefit of the lame duck session is most of those, because there's going to be a new Congress sworn in, there's going to be a presidential swearing in. Most of those concerns go away, and there's a lot better opportunity to get this through. So with the two of them working together, hopefully some opportunities in lame duck, with Senator McConnell stepping down, as leader, there's more opportunities, I think, to finally thread this needle.
How much do you think that plays a part in just the, I guess, better chances of safe passing, knowing that you have Mitch McConnell retiring? Like, I've learned from Don Murphy that to get something, you've got to give something, and that this could happen during lame duck session. Is there truth to that?
There is. Listen, it depends on what the Republican caucus really wants. I mean, Steve Daines is leading, the Republican charge to retake the Senate. If he's successful, I mean, Steve Daines, especially with the President Trump's, former President Trump's, endorsement. I think he even endorsed him to become majority leader. Like, Steve Daines, who has been the biggest advocate for SAFE, right, is going to have an outsized influence at that point.
Incredible.
It just gives us, more avenues, more roads to move forward. So, the prospects are certainly brighter at that point, for sure.
Based on you being in Washington, is there any talk going around? I've heard this a few times from a few people that the Democrats are worried about obviously losing the Senate, the House, and the White House. And if that's the case, is there an effort, as you said, like Chuck Schumer, to get this done? Is that, put things into, I guess, an urgency mode to get something passed? Because is there some of that dialogue that's taking place in Washington where they're worried about losing all that?
Listen, I'd say this, having worked on several campaigns: if you're not running scared, if you're not afraid of losing everything, then you're not running, right? I mean, so listen, I think Senator Schumer, you look at the polling numbers of Senator Brown, Senator Tester, some of the others, they're still hanging in there. They're close races. It's going to be It's likely to be a long election night. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think, if everything flips one side or another, I think it's a little tougher to predict. But usually in those lame duck sessions, people want to clear the decks of things that have been hanging around for a while, like some appropriations things, safe banking,
Yeah.
some of the other stuff. Plus, there's all this momentum around crypto, which I won't get into. I'm not a crypto expert, but there's all this tying cannabis to crypto, and there's still a lot of momentum around that. So yeah, I'm still very bullish on a lame duck session for sure.
I know people push this at the back and say there's more pressing issues, but what a night that'll be to find out who's the president, as well as Amendment 3 in Florida. Is that not going to be a massive night? There's so many at stake for this industry, but if this goes the right way that we're all hoping, and let's say we get some sort of rescheduling happens prior to the election, suddenly we look back here at July 10th and look at some of these stories that were basically manifesting, and it's just, this is part of the process, I guess, right?
For sure. Well, and listen, if you get, I mean, look, we got 57% right in Ohio. If cannabis cracks 60 in the state of Florida with the Republican governor coming out against it, that will be a very clear message to politicians writ large across the country. I mean, these are two red states for all intents and purposes.
Of course.
I'm sure Brown, notwithstanding, we'll see what happens in that race, but the polling numbers are off the charts. It's again.
There was an early poll, it was only about 1,000 people. That was part of the poll that we reported late last week, but 64% right now are approved, and 18 to 29 in Florida right now, 100% approval. Now, again, it's a small poll and we're still early, but telling sign to say the least that the average age demographic, 45 and younger, is definitely in huge support. But 64% is a telling number, and kudos to obviously everybody that's getting involved. I know your team is involved. Kim Rivers leading, obviously, the Smart and Safe angle towards that.
Job with that for sure. We've been a small part, but Trulieve has definitely done a great job leading that initiative in Florida.
Lots to think about, that's for sure. But I don't want to put you on the spot, but I will ask the same question. You do believe rescheduling happens, as I said earlier, before the election?
I do. Yes. I mean, listen, the administration has been working on this for years. It is something that I know they want to get done. I know they know is right. I mean, listen, and just the way the vice president talks about it, I mean, rescheduling, will send a clear message to law enforcement that, you should not treat cannabis like it is fentanyl or cocaine. Like it is groundbreaking in that sense. And it is something I know, the president wanted to see the science first. He got the science for HHS. I know that, he wouldn't have said it in the State of the Union. We forget, that is the things that get into the State of Union are that is really focused. That is really an administration is looking at every single word. So many things get left on the cutting room floor. There's so many issues out there. The fact that it was in there and that the vice president has gone out and repeatedly beat the drum, listen, again, anything can happen, but the momentum is way on the side of getting this done before November.
What do you think? How has your job changed today when you go to Washington, say from 2 years ago? Is it just conversations where people are more educated with the people that you're meeting, or are you constantly meeting with new people all the time?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is with certain people, certain leaders on the issues. It's a constant dialogue about what's happening now. Is there another avenue? Is there another bill that we can get in? But then, the House always has this constant churn of new members, and are they going to re-sign onto SAFE, and what's new in the leadership? And of course, we had a new speaker. We've got Patrick McHenry's position. We've, Dave Joyce has been out there, just coordinating all that and making sure everybody understands the bills that are going through. Yeah, it's the education process is never ending. What does rescheduling mean? Educating on that. There is always work to be done on educating our members because they have so many issues that they're dealing with, right? And cannabis is just one of a million. So to keep them focused again,
I hear what you're saying. However, I always bring this up, that State of the Union address, President Biden, when he talked about cannabis, that tweet that he posted outperformed any other topic by 10 times. So as much as we push it to the back, it's a popular one. One thing for sure, though, this industry, you're always on your toes. It ages you, because I don't think people realize that you're 23 and I'm 24 years old, but it ages us, right?
Well, certainly watching the markets every day will age. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, listen, say thank you. Give my thanks to Jason and Charlie for setting this up. But I wanted to reach out, best thought leaders in the space. And like I said, for public records, for anybody who wants to know, Cresco Labs indeed is lobbying over twice as much as the second largest company for money pertaining to Washington every single month. So that gives you an idea as to why they have the contacts that they have. And most importantly, giving you the information to give you a better understanding of the pathway to revenue. Mr. Sullivan, are you a Bears fan? Before you go?
I am a Bears fan, and we are very much looking forward to a new era.
I'm sure you are. Football. That is a young team with a lot of upside potential. The season's tickets, like, have they gone up there as far as?
Well, yeah. Well, listen, there's still cautious. It's like safe banking. There's a lot of cautious optimism. I mean, we've ruined so many quarterbacks in the past. It's hard to imagine that, but we're staying optimistic. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. I remember the one time they had Peyton Manning on with that whole skit with the Bears, and they were talking about how, was it disappointing in your career that you couldn't live up to the potential of Hall of Fame quarterbacks that the Bears have displayed over the past 30 years? But
for sure, I will say, by making that reference to the Bears, you've definitely proven to everybody we're not 23.
No one's probably going to know any of that on here, but listen, tell the team I say hi, and let's keep in touch. All right.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. All right, let's check out some of the comment section here right now. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, everybody. But the big reason why I, again, wanted to have John on is that he's probably in Washington more so than any other representative of any company in the space right now. So a lot of the stuff, and I can understand some of you talking about how Chuck Schumer, doesn't want this to pass. Well, that's what we speculate on. However, I think the big takeaway is that what are the conversations he's having every single day that gives us maybe a little bit more proof to get a better understanding as to where things sit. But I think the big takeaway too is that it's the constant churn in Washington. Just when you're making momentum with one politician, suddenly there's a new House Speaker. And like you said, they're meeting with different people all the time. But GOP, thank you obviously for some of the comments that you've put. High at 9 News, right? Safe banking will be in the crypto bill. We shall see. But I think another thing to take away here today is rescheduling and how that's going to build a lot of momentum. Mitch McConnell retiring as well. I think we can't overlook that. But let's just block out this noise. And again, if there's information that you all want to know and learn from, reach out to us on Twitter. Email us, let us know, leave comments on our community page, and we'll make sure to reach out to the appropriate people and to give you the information that you want to make sure that we understand, yes, this is becoming very political. The pitchforks are out amongst the anti-legalization groups right now, but let's just simplify things and keep everything straight and straightforward. So I hope you guys appreciated today's podcast. Coming up Friday, we're going to have more of this conversation. Eric Berlin comes back on from Denton's as well. TDR co-host, Mr. Anthony Varell, he's back from Western Canada, so he'll be hopping on Friday as well. We'll talk about some of the things that have been developing across the industry, more and more states, medical, and a lot of petitions and signatures basically being required at deadlines coming up. But yeah, we're seeing more and more states, including Ohio. It's about to go live any day now. So lots of momentum when you look at just the overall framework that's growing within this industry. Capital market side, as I said, man, the volume is low right now, but we're in the summer doldrums. Let's look at the fall and see what's ahead of us. But long and strong. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks for checking in, and we'll see you back here at 11 a.m. on Friday. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.